I went to the wedding of a junior colleague from work, only for the bride to say, "People with a low education and who are poor should sever ties with my husband." She was looking down on me because I dropped out of school. Rather than stopping her, my colleague, the groom, joined her in mocking me. I decided then and there to cut them out of my life and reach out to someone. Get ready, because I'm going to make you regret ever judging people solely on their education. My name is Godwin, and I'm 32. I was raised in an average family, neither rich nor poor, the only son of working parents. What sets me apart is that while most of my classmates were thinking about high school, I was frantically searching for a job. Both of my parents are college graduates, but I was eager to start working as soon as possible. At first, they were confused but eventually supported me, saying it's my life to live as I see fit. I first worked as a factory laborer in my hometown, then switched jobs to become a painting contractor site supervisor. Now, I've been employed at a publicly traded major machinery manufacturer for 7 years. I'm a service department manager, visiting clients to handle machinery installation, repairs, and maintenance. Today, I have another round of repairs and maintenance visits planned. As I drive toward the freeway in the company car, my work cell phone rings. Seeing the displayed company name, my mood sinks a little. Not again. I pull over and call back immediately, only to find out it's another complaint from a client. I apologize. I'll be there right away, okay? I bow my head apologetically, phone in hand, even though the person on the other end can't see me. Now, I have to rearrange my schedule to handle this complaint first. It's going to be a long day. After 7 p.m., I return to the branch office and find Theodore from my service department already back, chatting happily with a colleague from sales. "I'm back." "Good job." Noticing me, Theodore quickly heads back to his seat and starts working on his computer. Each branch office in various regions is staffed by a small team and overseen by an area manager. In this branch, it's just Theodore, who is 2 years younger than me, and myself in the service department. "Hey, Theodore, got a minute?" "What is it?" You could hear the irritation in his voice. "Got a complaint from one of your clients this morning. I went and fixed it myself, but we're both going tomorrow to apologize." "Why did you leave it unattended for 2 days?" "I had plans both days. The CEO over there is always bossing me around. Maybe they should rethink how they treat me." As usual, all that comes out of Theodore's mouth are excuses and complaints about the client. "I'm reporting this to the area manager." I had to step in and fix a client's issue, of course. I have to report it. Yet, Theodore, without any remorse, snorts and says, "So you're ratting on me again, just because you're jealous of my education. You exaggerated things in your reports." He thinks I, a college dropout, I'm jealous of him? A graduate from a prestigious university. Theodore used to be this polite, humble, and adorable junior. But the moment he found out I was a dropout, his attitude changed entirely. I wouldn't mind if he did his job correctly, but there are too many complaints from his clients, and it's a headache. The next day, we both go to the client to apologize. "What are you doing here now? Your job is to fix this." The president of the client company is aggressive with his words, but it's not uncommon for people in industrial settings. I'm used to it, but Theodore, with no field experience, stands there saying nothing. After calming the angry client and discussing future improvements, Theodore finally mutters a soft, "I'm sorry." I thought he'd be feeling down on the ride back, but I was wrong. "Why are field workers so uncivilized?" Instead of showing any remorse, Theodore was back to bashing the client. "That CEO pretty much advertises his lack of education with the way he talks." It was embarrassing to witness. Who made the client that angry? Maybe you should reflect on your work. My words fall on deaf ears. You're just out of touch because you've worked in those environments. Even so, if you're going to be in this line of work, you have to get used to it. Theodore laughs mockingly. What are you talking about? I only took this job to gain some mechanical knowledge. I don't plan on sticking around. Typically, people like Theodore would spend 2 years in service, then move to sales. But he's been here for 3 years. Nobody's going to move a guy with so many complaints to a sales position. He genuinely believes the bad reports are all because of me being jealous. If that's the case, all the more reason to get good at your service job. Show some sincerity to the client. Sincerity? When his attitude is that bad? There's no sincerity to talk about. Maybe it wouldn't bother me if he was on the same level as me, professionally speaking. I couldn't bring myself to say another word to Theodore. One day, I was on a business trip to set up some machinery. The test run didn't go as planned due to some glitches, so I had to stay overnight to fix it the next day. We had limited staff at the branch, so when major tasks like this came up, other local branches would help out. As I was looking for a place to eat near the hotel, someone called out to me, "Hey, what are you up to?" Turning around, there stood Theodore, arm in arm with a woman. "Oh, hey, Theodore, good evening." I greeted the woman beside him and offered a handshake, which she accepted without a word. "This is my girlfriend, Selena. She's from around here." I felt like I'd seen her somewhere before, but I didn't dwell on it. Theodore invited me to dinner, and I accepted. After ordering, Theodore started to gloat. "Actually, we just got engaged. She graduated from the same college as me, and her family is quite wealthy locally, and definitely on a fast track to success." That explained the dinner invitation. He wanted to show off his fiancée. As for Selena, she barely acknowledged me, not making eye contact and offering only occasional nods to Theodore. Dinner ended with Theodore dominating the conversation. When it was time to go, he excused himself to go to the restroom. Left alone with Selena, she broke the silence. "I've heard quite a bit about you from Theodore." Her eyes locked onto mine as she spoke with a certain coldness. I could tell Theodore had been bad-mouthing me. "You think your managerial role is a big deal? Just because you've been at the company a few years longer? Could you please stop blocking Theodore's career?" Certainly, the position of manager is something anyone can achieve through years of service and performance evaluations. And our direct boss is the area manager. For Theodore, I'm just a senior colleague, which isn't incorrect. Deciding it was futile to argue, I let it go. Theodore soon returned and wouldn't make eye contact, pretending like nothing happened. As I was leaving, I asked him about work for tomorrow, and he said he'd be helping out at this branch. Something felt off, but I didn't say anything because she was there. The next day, I went to troubleshoot a test run as planned, but Theodore never showed up. I felt uneasy, so I discreetly consulted the area manager and had him look into Theodore's business trip application. Turns out, on the day I met Theodore and his girlfriend, they were supposed to be on a business trip that involved an overnight stay. This was a clear false claim. The area manager asked to handle the rest, so I left it to them. Sometime later, the date for Theodore and his girlfriend's wedding was set. I wasn't invited and felt relieved. But a week before the ceremony, the area manager asked me to attend in their place. They were supposed to give the main speech but couldn't make it, so they asked me to do it. I initially declined, but accepted when they said they had showed up later. On the wedding day, I arrived early and bumped into Theodore and his girlfriend on my way to the waiting room. They looked surprised to see me. "You know, my elite friends and I all have degrees from prestigious universities and work in top-tier companies. I didn't think you, a dropout, would fit in, so we didn't invite you." Theodore scoffed. "I was asked to speak on behalf of the area manager who will be late. Once they arrive, I leave," I replied. The color drained from their faces.
Are you trying to embarrass me by having a dropout give a speech? If the area manager can't make it, there's no need for a speech.
Leave now, Theodore commanded. Cut ties with my husband. You, uneducated pauper, his girlfriend chimed in. They laughed haughtily and walked into the waiting room, leaving me stunned. A new emotion welled up and my whole body started trembling. If they want to sever ties, then so be it. I stayed under the radar and waited for my turn to speak. Finally, it was my turn. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the mic. Though Theodore and his girlfriend glared, urging me to leave, I started my speech unfazed. Congratulations on your wedding. If you thought I'd stick to usual pleasantries, you're mistaken. Theodore isn't exactly commendable in his job, but this is a celebratory occasion, so I must use only the highest praises. Top tier graduate, Theodore. You are exceptional in accumulating customer complaints at work. Your unrepentant and arrogant behavior, always blaming our clients, really showcases your thick skin. I'm always impressed.
Stop it now!
She stands up beside a flustered Theodore and shouts, overtaken by rage. You're supposed to cut ties with Theodore. Quit bullying him. The room starts buzzing, but I continue my speech unfazed. Our Ivy League grad Theodore is quite the trickster. He's been lying about business trips to go hang out with her and claiming expenses for it. That's pretty bold and clear embezzlement.
Hey, cut it out! You're making this up!
Theodore shouts red-faced and starts coming towards me. She also stands up and screams. What's your evidence for all of this? Are you insane? The room descends into chaos, prompting the MC to nervously ask me to stop. I thought, maybe this is as far as it goes. At that moment, the door swings open with a bang. The ones who entered the now silent room were the area manager and the president of the client company. She goes pale when she sees the president heading straight for the bride and groom's table.
So, you're lying about wanting to quit your job to marry me was a lie?
Turns out, she had been working as a hostess at the club. I recognize her because I was once told at the club that she was the one I was supposed to marry. I had contacted the area manager to bring the president after realizing her true identity in her dressed-up appearance.
I lent you money to quit your job and pay off your debt. Then you disappeared and planned to marry someone else?
That is... She couldn't come up with any excuses when faced with the calm president. Even Theodore didn't know about her working in the hostess club. He storms back to her and confronts her.
What is going on?
She snaps back. You act all elite, but you are a no-good criminal. Even worse than a dropout.
That dropout's just jealous of me. It's all lies.
The area manager quietly stands in front of the shouting Theodore. We have evidence of your actions, and we'll be reporting them to headquarters. You'll be suspended until a decision is made. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Theodore stands there, his face ashen. The president says to her, We'll be speaking through lawyers from now on. The once defiant woman breaks down in tears. The MC wisely suspends the ceremony and the guests are asked to leave. I leave the scene with the area manager and the president. Rumor has it that Theodore and she had planned to get their marriage certificate after the ceremony, but now it's off. Both families are blaming each other and fighting over the wedding costs. Theodore was fired for misconduct, and they're calculating the exact amount he embezzled for restitution. The only thing that stings a bit is that the area manager also received a pay cut for poor supervision of his subordinates. Theodore had timed his business trips to coincide with days when major tasks like machine installments were happening, and the area manager had approved these trips. As for the woman facing fraud charges from the CEO for her sham marriage, she'll likely be tied up in court for a while. Of course, I've cut ties with Theodore and haven't spoken to him since that day. As for me, I'm just going to continue living my life with my head held high.
I, Lisa, tied the knot last year with Harry, my boyfriend of 3 years. We first met on social media. It all began when Harry, a friend of a friend, liked a photo of me and started following me. He's 2 years younger and works as a software engineer. Though he's in tech, he's also a great communicator and seemed to be recognized as a rising star at his company. On our second anniversary, Harry proposed. It was a truly simple proposal. At our favorite local Italian restaurant, just before dessert, he began,
I have something to say.
Curious, I waited, and then he said,
Will you marry me?
presenting a ring. It was a straightforward proposal, but it deeply moved me. Of course, I immediately replied, Yes, I'd love to. Later, I learned from Harry that before we even started dating, during a casual drink with friends, the topic of ideal proposals came up. I had mentioned wanting something simple, and he remembered it all along. Afterwards, we held our engagement party at a hotel in New York. That's when I first met Harry's family. He has his parents and an older sister, who's 6 years his senior and was also planning to get married soon. Harry, standing at 5'6", is on the shorter side for a guy. His entire family is also quite petite. On the other hand, I'm tall for a woman at 5'5". My mom, a former model, is even an inch taller than me. And my dad stands tall at 5'10". I couldn't help but feel a bit concerned about our height differences. I've always been attracted to shorter guys, usually around 5'3". Conversely, Harry has a thing for taller women. So we were a perfect match in that sense. Our engagement party, however, lacked a certain spark. Later, I found out that Harry's mother and sister had been criticizing my family and me. After that meeting, we got married in August, 3 months later. Instead of a lavish ceremony, we just wanted a casual, fun gathering with friends. So, we simply held a wedding announcement party. This didn't sit well with Harry's mother and sister. When we visited Harry's family home after the wedding, they openly showed their displeasure. It was summer and I wore a yellow floral sleeveless dress with heeled sandals. They began, Could you not wear something like that to someone's house? I'm so sorry, I'll go change right away. Feeling I'd made a mistake, I rushed home to change. When I returned, Harry's mother criticized the Baumkuchen cake I brought. Who wants to eat such a thing in this heat? Normally people bring cooler looking, refreshing desserts, don't they? I had chosen the Baumkuchen because it's delicious when chilled. You really don't think things through. I guess your model mother couldn't teach you better. Just because you have a small face doesn't mean you have a big brain. Looks aren't everything, especially in our family. We value consideration. Not like your family that only cares about appearances." I was shocked to hear them speak about my mother and father this way. I looked to Harry for support, but he seemed lost in thought. On our way home, Harry began, "About what my mom and sister said earlier? Yeah, I never expected them to act like that. They had made some comments after the engagement party, but I thought they'd come around. I'm really sorry." "It's okay. We'll get to know each other better over time." "Probably." "Yeah, but I never thought they'd be like that. I was naive." "Don't worry about it. Accepting someone new into the family can be challenging." At that time, knowing Harry cared was enough for me. I don't want to be taken advantage of by someone else, and I just need to take the time to build a relationship of trust. One day, Harry's sister messaged him, saying she and her husband wanted to visit our home. So, on a Saturday afternoon, they were scheduled to come over. "I have to work this Saturday. Can you handle them alone?" Harry had asked his sister to reschedule, but she insisted on that day. "Yeah, I'll take care of everything." And so, on Saturday, Harry's sister and her husband arrived. "Please make yourselves at home. We're here to see if you're living properly." After I quickly cleared the tea and cake, my sister-in-law said, "All right, let's see your place," and hurried off to the bedroom. To my shock, she started opening my closet without asking. "Please don't go through my closet without permission." "Why not? I came to see if you're living properly. Who knows? Maybe you just shove everything in there without cleaning." "That's not true." Then she began taking pictures of the closet's contents with her phone. "Hey, what are you doing? Don't take pictures without asking." "My mom asked me to. She wanted photos." It was so rude. She checked every drawer, even commenting on the color of my underwear, took pictures of the dresser's contents, the bathroom cabinet, and even under the kitchen sink. She meticulously photographed the living room cabinet where we keep our valuables. No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she continued taking pictures throughout the house. In the living room, she noticed our high-end brand TV, a gift from my parents, and remarked with a hint of disdain, "You have a pretty nice TV." She then snapped a photo and said to her husband, who had been silently following her, "We need to step up our game." That night, after my husband returned from work, I told him everything. I couldn't help but cry a little. "We might need to set some boundaries. My dad has been giving me some intel too." "Really?" "Just wait and see." In April, it had been 5 years since my husband's grandmother passed away, so there was a family gathering. Since we didn't have a wedding, this was my first time meeting my husband's extended family. His family originally moved from Atlanta, and the gathering was held there. Of course, most of the relatives live in Atlanta. The gathering was overwhelming. There were so many relatives, and it was hard to remember everyone. My mother-in-law, probably on purpose, didn't introduce me to anyone. I asked my husband to introduce me. However, everyone seemed to sense the tension, and their reactions were lukewarm at best. My sister-in-law, trying to show off, deliberately chatted happily with the relatives in front of me. When I looked lost, she swooped in and said, "She's so clueless. All she cares about is her looks." Come on, help out. My mother-in-law joined in, treating me as the clueless daughter-in-law. Time passed, and my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed no signs of improving. One day, in early fall, my mother-in-law suggested a family trip. She wanted to go to Boston since the Acela Express passed through there. Everyone agreed, and it was decided that my father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, husband, and I would go. My brother-in-law couldn't join due to work. I was looking forward to the trip in September when the weather was cooler. However, I was worried about being harassed by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law during the trip. But this time, my husband would be with me. I had never been to Boston, so I was excited. We planned to use a long weekend for the trip. On the day, while my husband and father-in-law were buying snacks, my mother-in-law suddenly said, "Oh no, I think I left my glasses at the cafe we were at earlier." "The cafe upstairs?" "Yes. Can you go get them?" Which store is that?" "Isn't there an area on the second floor where there are several stores lined up? It's a self-service cafe over there." "But our train is leaving soon, isn't it?" "That's why I'm asking you to hurry." "But do you expect me to go through the trip without my glasses?" "I didn't mean—" "Just go!" Reluctantly, I ran off to find her glasses. There's no way I'd make it back in time for the train. I ran as fast as I could. "We've got the snacks. Let's hurry." "Let's go." "Where's Lisa?" "She said she needed the restroom and went ahead." "All right, let's hurry then." By the time I returned from the cafe on the second floor, having confirmed there were no forgotten glasses, the Acela Express had already departed. I knew it. From the start, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned to leave me behind. On second thoughts, as I was processing this, my mother-in-law called. "We've already left," she said, her voice dripping with glee. But I retorted, "Yes, I'm aware. Take care." "What? What did she say?" From the other end, I could hear my sister-in-law. "She's acting tough, saying take care or something." Poor thing, left behind and still trying to act strong. Just before the call ended, I overheard my husband and father-in-law saying they were going to the restroom. About 20 minutes later, the Acela Express arrived at New London Station. "Where are the guys? They're taking a while." "Maybe they stopped for a beer." In reality, my husband and father-in-law had gotten off the train. Unbeknownst to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, they returned to Metro Park Station, paid for round-trip tickets, and met up with me. Our real destination for this trip was Washington, D.C. My father-in-law had informed me of the scheme my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had planned. He was furious at their constant harassment. He once confronted them, saying, "Enough of this nonsense. Lisa is a good person and important to Harry." But they dismissed it. "Dad, you're just blinded by her looks. Men are so easily deceived." They didn't even try to listen to their father-in-law's opinion. Their ill intentions continued, and my father-in-law decided a harsh lesson was needed. So, he and my husband hatched a plan to leave them behind instead. On the contrary, my plan is to leave my mother-in-law and sister-in-law behind. Thus, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were left on the Acela Express, likely not realizing until they reached Boston. They probably didn't bring much money, expecting my father-in-law to cover all expenses. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were in for a tough time. They had no hotel to stay in. My husband had taken care of the travel arrangements, and he had canceled the Boston hotel reservation the day after booking it. With little cash on hand, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were definitely in a bind.
They won't get it unless we teach them a lesson like this. They're adults. They'll find their way back somehow.
My father-in-law, my husband, and I enjoyed some snacks we just bought on the Acela Express heading to Washington. Yes, the two of them going to buy snacks was actually part of our plan. We arrived in Washington before evening. Throughout the journey, there were several messages from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to my father-in-law and husband, but both of them ignored them completely. The three of us thoroughly enjoyed Washington.
It's more fun without those two. I was trying not to say that.
Both Harry and my father-in-law were in high spirits, making such comments. We had a relaxed trip without cramming too much sightseeing. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who were left behind on the Acela Express, they got off at Boston South Station and waited for my father-in-law and husband, but they never showed up. They realized something was off, but it was too late. They frantically messaged my father-in-law and husband, but there was no response since they had decided to ignore them. They finally realized they had been left behind and headed to the hotel. But the hotel reservation had been canceled the day before. They went to the nearest restaurant and checked how much money they had. Both had relied on my father-in-law's wallet during the trip, so they hardly had any cash and didn't even bring credit cards. Together, they had about $150, just enough for a cheap hotel and a late-night bus ride home. But they couldn't even have a decent meal. They tried to book a bus for that night, but it was already full. So, they reluctantly booked a bus for the next night. For about a day and a half, they couldn't eat properly. They shared a biscuit they bought at the station. They kept messaging my father-in-law and husband, but of course, there was no reply. It seemed like my mother-in-law and sister-in-law no longer had the energy to bother me. For dinner, they bought cereal at a grocery store and ate it in their hotel room.
Mom, what's going on? I don't know. Isn't it your father's doing? Who's the mastermind?
But this is too much, isn't it? The next day, they went without food or drink and waited until night to board the bus. Apparently, I had a ton of messages and missed calls from them. I had blocked them, so I only noticed later. The next morning, the bus arrived in New York. They slept until the evening. By the time they woke up, my father-in-law, my husband, and I had returned from Washington. I went back to our apartment first, and my husband went to his parents' house with his father. We knew from messages that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had somehow made it back. As soon as they got home, they confronted my father-in-law and husband. My husband and I were on standby, called by my father-in-law.
What's the meaning of this? We had very little cash and went through so much. We did it because you two planned to leave Jamie behind. So, Harry and I plan to leave you two behind.
But that's cruel. It's her fault. She pointed at me. I wasn't sure how to react, so I just smiled.
I am so pissed. Stop smiling.
My sister-in-law threw her bottled tea at me, but my father-in-law deflected it with a chop and it hit my mother-in-law's forehead.
Ouch.
I struggled to hold back my laughter.
Haven't you two learned your lesson?
My father-in-law shouted.
Mom, sis, stop this. It's embarrassing.
My husband laughed.
What's embarrassing? She's the embarrassing one.
Enough. If you keep this up, I'll divorce you.
What? Divorce?
My mother-in-law turned pale.
Sis, Mom, just stop, or I'll get really mad.
The word divorce completely demoralized my sister-in-law and mother-in-law.
It's because of you two that this happened. Just accept it.
My mother-in-law and sister-in-law finally broke down in tears. Father, Harry, it seems they're truly remorseful. Please forgive them. I never wanted things to end this way. Please, I beg you. I pleaded with my father-in-law and husband.
Jamie, we're so sorry.
And there, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law vowed never to harass me again and apologized for everything they had done. Thanks to me, talks of divorce and disownment were off the table. Little did they know, this was all part of my plan. The one who seemed the most excited when we hatched this plan was my father-in-law. But that's a secret. Half a year has passed since then. Recently, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have started treating me normally. Now, the three of us even go shopping and visit cafes together. I finally felt accepted as a part of the family. Next year, I hope to go on a Boston trip with the entire family. This time, without any hitches.
My husband and I built a new house to live with my parents. Construction went smoothly and it was finally complete. But on the day it was finished, my husband brought his parents. I initially thought they were here to celebrate, but it seemed that wasn't the case. This is where we'll live. Send your parents away, okay?
Wow, what a beautiful house. I'm looking forward to our new life here. Sorry for the sudden change, but my parents will be living here. We can't live with your parents, so please ask them to leave.
Suddenly, my husband's parents declared they'd live in our new house. Even my husband sided with them. I decided to get back at my inconsiderate husband and his parents. I started by making a call to someone. I'm Madeline, a 27-year-old office worker. I'm married, but don't have kids. Life with my husband, Wesley, has been smooth. Recently, with some financial comfort, I began thinking about my aging parents. After much thought, I decided I wanted to live with them and shared this with Wesley. Wesley surprisingly agreed.
It's a good idea. Your parents will be happy, and it's a way to show gratitude.
Surprisingly, he seemed to be positive about the ideas and gave me various advice.
If we're going to live together, our current house might be too small. How about building a new one? We might need more space if we have kids. What do you think?
Wesley was right. Our current house wasn't spacious. Considering future kids, a bigger house seemed better, so I agreed. Little did I know this house would lead to such a problem. We started planning immediately. We discussed the best house for elderly parents, its proximity to the station, and its size. Which plot of land do you prefer? I think this one's more spacious. How about this house design? It's barrier-free for our parents, and the many windows will make it bright. I discussed various things like this. Wesley suggested,
This plot is bigger, but it's too far from the station. We should consider convenience. Having many windows is great for brightness and openness, but it might be risky during earthquakes. Maybe fewer windows would be better.
He gives very accurate opinions. With Wesley's input, and after consulting online and with real estate agents, we prepared to build. It took longer than expected, but we're finally ready.
Yes, it was a long process, researching and consulting, but now we just have to wait for it to be finished.
We occasionally visited the construction site, but mostly we waited patiently. Finally, the house was done. I excitedly emailed my parents. The new house is ready. Let's decide on a moving date. Then Wesley arrived, but he wasn't alone. He brought his parents. I thought he had come for a housewarming party, and I greeted him and his parents-in-law, wondering, why did Wesley bring his parents when we weren't even in this house? But what they said was unexpected. This is the new house you built? It's quite nice. From now on, we'll live here. Your parents can't. If they come, send them away. This is our new home.
Is this the new place? It's beautiful. Thanks for preparing this for us. We're proud of our son. We're counting on you. Show us the rooms. Who has the keys?
He said things like that and proceeded to talk on his own. I was confused. This house was for my parents and us. Wesley had agreed. I thought he'd convince his parents, but he said,
Sorry, but as Mom said, my parents will live here, so we can't live with your parents. If they stay, it won't work. To be honest, they're in the way.
I couldn't believe even Wesley, whom I trusted, would say something like that to me. I was so shocked. I couldn't find the words to respond. Then, without asking, they just moved into the new house, started unpacking, and began setting up as if they lived there. Such a reckless attitude. And Wesley didn't even try to stop them. Seeing this, I decided to get a divorce. Later, I confronted him. This house was built for my parents, not for your parents, Wesley. Why are you suddenly saying this? This isn't what we agreed on. But all Wesley did was snort in amusement. Despite my repeated requests for them to leave, they seemed annoyed and even tried to kick me out. I didn't want to live with his parents either, so I left. I kept asking them to either buy the house or leave, but they ignored me. To make matters worse, even after our divorce, they expected me to pay the mortgage. I was furious at both his ridiculous parents and Wesley for going along with them. I immediately called a law firm and hired a lawyer who specializes in divorce disputes. A few days later, I brought the lawyer with me to draft a divorce agreement. Wesley agreed to the divorce itself, but he absolutely refused to leave the house. Even when I suggested he pay the mortgage and stay, he wouldn't agree. Their absurd demand was that they continue living in the house, but I, the one divorcing, would pay the mortgage. Even the lawyer couldn't help but smirk at their audacity. However, when the lawyer told them,
if you continue to live here without permission, the owner, which is her, can sue you,
they seemed to reconsider. The divorce agreement included a clause about handing over the house. Following the lawyer's advice, I set a deadline. Hand over the house to me by this date. If you don't, either buy the house or leave, no matter the reason. Though they were submissive in front of the lawyer, as we parted, Wesley and his family gave me a spiteful smirk. I wondered why they were smirking, even after signing the divorce agreement, but it soon became clear. They had no intention of leaving. They seemed to think that as long as they lived there, no one could force them out. Despite my repeated warnings, They just claimed they were preparing to leave. In the end, I couldn't reclaim the house by the promised date. On the day, I gave them one last warning. Wesley, his mother, and father just laughed at me.
A divorce agreement is just a piece of paper. We've lived here until today and faced no issues.
Relying on a lawyer, it's like you can't do anything on your own. I feel relieved to be divorcing such a useless woman.
You don't understand your place as a daughter-in-law. You should serve Wesley. This house is for Wesley, and by extension, his family. Know your place.
I could only sigh. Why did I marry someone like this? But regretting it now wouldn't change anything. Fine. Since you won't respect that piece of paper, I'll sue. If you won't listen to me or the lawyer, I'll let the court handle it. When they heard the word lawsuit, Wesley and his family seemed taken aback. But perhaps because they had lived comfortably, even after being warned by a lawyer, they seemed to underestimate the situation. However, their laughter faded when I explained that even if it's not a crime that leads to arrest, I can still sue them. They started to gauge my seriousness. When I called my lawyer right then and there, Wesley suddenly raised his voice in anger. Ignoring him, I told my lawyer, "Hello? Yes, they don't seem to have any intention of leaving or buying the house. I've decided to proceed with the lawsuit as planned." Sensing my determination, Wesley and his family suddenly changed their tune, crying and begging.
We're old and can't work anymore. Please, let us stay here. It's hard for us to live with these aging bodies. We don't have much time left. Please reconsider out of respect for the elderly.
If we leave, we'll have nowhere to go. Are you really going to do this to us? Just let us stay a bit longer. Or do you not care about old people who don't have much money? If you kick us out, we'll end up homeless and starve on the streets. Please, think of it as charity.
If we leave, my parents will have nowhere to live. I can't provide a good life for them with my income. Just say okay, and everything will be resolved. Please?
They tried to use their living situation as leverage. Their true intentions were clear. They thought I wouldn't be able to refuse. But I did. After all, they started living there without my permission and then demanded money. It was too much. I explained my stance with a cold demeanor. How many times do I have to say it? I'm the one paying for this house, and it's in my name. We only put in my name because you had just changed jobs and couldn't get approved for the loan. This house is entirely mine. I even set a deadline in the divorce agreement to give you a choice. But you did nothing. I've warned you over and over. You ignored me, and now you're trying to guilt trip me when faced with a lawsuit? It's ridiculous. They were silent, unable to respond. When I arranged for a moving company to send all their belongings to their original home, they glared at me with hatred. You're like a devil for doing this to old people like us. If we starve to death, we'll curse you forever. Remember that.
How can you do this? Don't you have any compassion? What about my parents? It's all your fault. We told you. It's hard for us to work or even live daily. You heartless person. We'll never forget this.
They left with those parting words. I kept a straight face, but inside, I was smiling. I thought I could finally have peaceful days, but they started harassing me again. They seemed to hold a grudge, so they began causing trouble at my house. I had anticipated this and installed security cameras. I planned to make them compensate for any damages, but even with photographic evidence and bills, they didn't pay. Tired of warning them, I decided to consult the police. With evidence from the security cameras and photos of the damaged items, the police promised to increase patrols. The police have started to mark people and warn them, perhaps because it's easier to move when there's evidence. Perhaps the police's attention scared them, as the harassment stopped. Finally, I regained my peaceful life. I later learned that they moved to a cheaper area and lived in an old, affordable apartment. They seemed to live beyond their means, and always struggled financially, unable to save. Therefore, they cannot save money. Wesley, frustrated with the situation, reportedly said,
I'm the one working, and they're wasting money. Who do they think is earning? They need to think before spending. I can't take care of them anymore.
and left them. After some time, his parents came to visit. Do you have a moment? We're sorry for the sudden visit. Can you take care of us? We're old and can't work. Our son left us. You're our only hope. Please take care of us.
We'll have nowhere to live if you don't help. We'll end up homeless. We can't do much at our age. Please, can we stay here? We'll do housework or anything we can,
they pleaded. Their selfishness was so extreme that I was more astonished than angry. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Don't come here again. If you do, I'll involve the police. With that, they left quickly. From what they said, they didn't know where Wesley had gone. I wanted to cut ties and forget about it all, but reality didn't let me. This time, Wesley came to me. No matter how many times I refused or ignored him, he kept coming, asking to get back together.
Look, I'm sorry about before. Turns out my dad had racked up a lot of debt, and we had to sell our original house. We had nowhere to live, and after paying off the debt, we had almost no savings left. I thought we could stay at your place. After leaving the house, we lived in a cheap apartment, but my parents kept spending, so we couldn't save money, and life became tough. That's why I left. Can't you give me another chance? I promise I won't act like that again, please.
Hearing this, I finally understood why his parents had come to my new house, and why they couldn't return to their family home. But hearing all this, I felt nothing but indifference. That's it. If you're done, then leave. No matter the reason, I won't reconsider. Just remember that. Goodbye. I tried to close the door, but he seemed persistent.
I'll apologize as many times as it takes. I won't give up until you forgive me. I'll prove myself.
It seems like he won't give up until I forgive him. True to his word, he seemed determined. Every time I went out, I'd likely run into him. He'd call and email almost daily. He had become a full-blown stalker. He'd even confront me in public, making scenes like, I'm truly sorry. I've reflected on my actions. What can I do for you to forgive me? I promise I won't do it again, making it seem like a one-sided marital spat. Because of this, even strangers would tell me, he's apologizing so much. Why didn't you forgive your husband? His persistence became unbearable, so I consulted the police again. Given our history, they acted quickly. Perhaps the threat of arrest worked as Wesley's stalking finally stopped. I managed to settle all the issues, and as initially planned, Mom and Dad and I started living in the new house. My parents thanked me, saying, "We appreciate all you've done to let us live in the house, despite the troubles." Despite the divorce, the three of us can now live happily. I don't know what became of them, but just knowing that makes me feel content. From now on, I plan to lead a fulfilling life while taking care of my parents. A new life in a new home. It's been a challenging journey, but from here on, I hope for peaceful and calm days. I wonder if I've shown enough gratitude to my parents who raised me with so much love. From now on, I vow to be more devoted and make every day count. out, you unemployed loser." Beth, my mother-in-law, spat these words at me as I continued to pay off thousands of dollars of my husband's debt every month. My father-in-law, who was kind to me when he was alive, would be turning in his grave. I'd honored his memory by silently shouldering these payments as a devoted daughter-in-law. "You're the epitome of unemployment, always messing around with your computer and phone. If you have time, get another job." "She's worse than unemployed. She's a conniving woman hoarding our money." Beth and my husband belittled me, the primary breadwinner who'd been entrusted with the family business by my late father-in-law. They even betrayed me in unthinkable ways. Fine, I'll leave. No more putting up with this. I agreed to a divorce, gathered my belongings, and left, leaving behind their debt and cluelessness. What awaited them was... My name is Avery. I'm 33 years old, married 9 years ago, and childless. I run a small printing company passed down from my late father-in-law, Orville, and my husband, Colin. Orville passed away 3 years ago, and we had been living with his parents for a few years before that to help with the business. Originally, Colin had been assisting his father since college, and we rented a place close to his childhood home. When Orville wanted to retire due to age, we agreed and moved in. I quit my job at a web design firm to help with Orville's printing business. Right now, it's just us, the husband and wife duo, running the show. Orville once had a female employee, but she left because I could handle the tasks alone. When Orville was alive, cohabitation was fine. But after losing our main source of income, things went south. "Are you planning on just playing around inside all day again?" Beth kept picking on me. I'd take the complaints if I were in the wrong, but I wasn't loafing around. While Colin operated the printing machines and delivered the printing goods, I was in charge of customer and data management. In some cases, if the submitted data is incomplete, I correct it. Beth didn't know that my data corrections had actually boosted sales. Colin isn't computer savvy and doesn't realize the invisible support I offer, much like Beth. Beth never worked even before Orville passed away, so to her, me sitting in front of the computer appears as leisure. But lately, Beth's nagging has intensified for a complicated reason that's rocking our household. It seems to be connected to a previous employee named Annie. Annie and Colin have been friends since childhood, and were in the same classes all through elementary, middle, and high school. After Orville passed away and we had his funeral, Annie started visiting our print shop more often. Since I've known Annie since we were kids, she gets along well with Beth. I heard that Beth strongly recommended hiring her to Orville in the first place. In his lifetime, Orville often criticized Annie, saying, "She's always slacking off, and when she does work, it's sloppy and full of mistakes." When I had to work with her for a few days to transition tasks, I was stunned by how careless she was. She couldn't even operate a computer properly, let alone correct data. Orville used to handle all the important documents like invoices himself because she couldn't even do simple calculations correctly. Then he handed them over to me. Checking her search history, I found she'd only been visiting vulgar sites and dating apps. I couldn't stand her, and it seemed Orville felt the same way. She was mostly there to keep Beth company, but that didn't sit well with the hardworking Orville. The problem now is Colin's attitude. While Orville was alive, he was diligent, but lately, he started complaining to me just like Beth. "You have it easy. You're just messing around on the computer all day while it feels like I'm the only one actually working." I'm certain that both my mother-in-law and my husband's complaints about me having it easy come from Annie's influence. When Orville was around, no such accusations were ever made. Now it's just Beth, Colin, and me living together. I want to keep the print shop that Orville left us going, but it's a struggle. I've been able to increase orders because I can correct data, but we're still in a tough financial situation. The reason? Beth and Colin's reckless spending. Beth has always been a spendthrift, buying brand name items one after the other despite my warnings. Since Orville passed away and Colin became the CEO, his spending has gotten out of hand too. Even though it's just the two of us in the business, he's started getting cocky, being hailed as the boss or the second generation of the company. He's been hitting the bars every night after work, and Beth has started eating out for dinner too, since her son is never home. Because both Beth and Colin are spending like there's no tomorrow, our increasing revenues can't stabilize the business. On top of that, Colin took out a substantial loan from the bank for a new venture without discussing it with me, and we haven't been able to keep up with the repayments. Naturally, the loan money is gone and he won't tell me what he used it for. Being the CEO and inheriting the rights to the company from Orville, he probably thought it was easy to get a loan just to have some fun. Seeing her son gallivanting around with bank loans, Beth thinks we're flush with cash and keeps up her spending to match. It's a vicious cycle, and things are spiraling out of control. I've been covering the monthly payments for the loans Colin frivolously took out. They're costing us thousands of dollars each month. I'm forced to take care of the accounting side of things, so I am paying my way. However, the two of them never stopped wasting money, so I had to force them to do something about the quandary. So I had to put my foot down and explain the reality of our financial situation to them, putting them both on an allowance. The two who were not convinced of the supremely obvious fact that what is not there can't be helped, began to act in unbelievable ways. You know, Annie told me that our company is making good money, Beth said. Are you hiding and spending it? Annie also said there should be cash and life insurance money left by Orville. Can you believe it? They consulted Annie, a former employee, and trusted her word over mine? I don't know if they actually believe her or are just grabbing onto whatever justification they can to ask for money. Either way, having Annie around, a former employee, has become a nuisance and a threat to me. Things with Colin have also gone cold recently. We once talked about having a boy and a girl before I turned 30, but that's not the atmosphere anymore. I'm working hard, but Beth and Colin are wasting money, eating out all the time, while I'm left dealing with the leftovers. There are two reasons why I'm putting up with this situation. One is my current hobby, social media. I've been posting about the state of my family and work, and surprisingly, it's well received. It's a nice stress reliever and increases my followers. The second and main reason is that Orville had specifically entrusted me with the company. He had said,
Avery, I trust you with our printing business.
he had left all financial and customer dealings to me. Unless he trusts me very much, he would not entrust me with the accounting side of the business, where all the company's money moves around. Considering Orville's feelings, I feel a sense of duty to maintain this company. Orville had always valued me as family, as his daughter, and as a co-worker. I remember him saying,
Sorry you have to deal with my foolish wife and foolish son, Avery. You don't have to put up with those idiots.
I want to continue protecting this printing company that Orville built in his lifetime as a symbol of my gratitude toward him.
Look at you. You're the epitome of unemployment.
Colin criticized me today as well while I was correcting a customer's file. The customer hadn't outlined the text, which would cause text overflow issues if left as is. Switching the orders to me directly does take time for data transfer, which can affect delivery schedule. It's pretty insulting to be called unemployed, considering the important work I'm doing. This woman's worse. She's hogging all our money with her nasty personality. Beth chimed in, backing Colin up. It's clear that their main objective is financial. They just want to spend more money. But when they start calling me unemployed or accuse me of having a nasty personality, it's nothing but slander. Despite their attitudes, I try explaining the company's financial situation to them once again. So what happened to Orville's personal savings? Orville's savings had been depleted long ago by Beth and Colin. Not a single dollar remained. So it was even more outrageous when Colin applied for a loan in the company's name. He must have a hidden account. He worked so hard to spit it out. Orville had indeed been a hard-working and honest man. He handled accounting without unnecessary tax dodges, and Beth's lavish spending was taken care of with his earnings. Yet, despite this, the savings were depleted, and now they were talking about non-existent hidden accounts? It was insulting to Orville's memory, and my disdain for them grew. I wondered if continuing to work with Beth and Colin, now so obsessed with money, would really honor Orville's legacy. Then, one day, I witnessed something shocking. It was a Friday night. A client had requested a print sample on map paper for a new product catalog. They needed it today, but Colin had gone out for dinner. It was a long-standing client, so I delivered the sample myself. On my way back, I caught my breath at the sight of the couple walking ahead. It was Colin, arm in arm with a woman. Next to them was Beth. Confused, I followed at a distance, unnoticed. The woman leaned into Colin passionately. I recognized her. It was Annie, a former employee. My thoughts came to a halt and I stood still. The three of them, laughing and chatting, grew smaller in the distance. I stood there until the backs of the three smaller people disappeared into a fine steak restaurant. I was stunned. I can't remember how I got home. When I came to, I was sitting in front of my home computer. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had just seen. No matter how you looked at it, Colin and Annie seemed more than just friends. Even though my marriage had cooled off, witnessing this betrayal was unsettling. If Colin is deeply involved with Annie, he'd likely trust her more than me. But what I couldn't grasp was Beth being with them. Beth and Annie were old friends, but seeing them enjoying themselves while Colin and Annie got cozy was perplexing. Were they in a relationship with Beth's approval? As unbelievable as that sounded, it would explain their behavior since Orville's passing. I had wanted to preserve the printing company that Orville had entrusted to me, but I was at a loss. Saturday came and neither Colin nor Beth returned. The two returned home on Sunday afternoon, the day after the day they left. They explained they had bumped into each other downtown and decided to go on a trip, just the two of them. You mean just the two of you? What about Annie? Isn't it three of you? As I calmly voiced my question, both of them burst into rage as if I had hit a nerve.
What's it to you about Annie? She's concerned about me and Mom.
That's right. Annie works for us. She knows you're trying to hog Orville's savings for yourself. Just by pointing out that Annie was likely with them, both became emotionally charged.
If you're the type to monopolize Dad's savings, we should get a divorce.
Then leave and don't come back. I've been told to divorce and leave, so I simply said, fine, I'll go, and walked away. I had packed my things the day before, and they were already arranged to be shipped to my parents' home. I can pick up the large items later. For now, I just want to leave as quickly as possible.
You'll have nowhere to go, even if you come crawling back.
Colin's parting words pierced through my back. Biting my lip, I clenched my fists tightly. A week later, I was contacted by Colin to sign the divorce papers and was called in for procedures, including handing over Orville's business. Colin, Beth, and even Annie were all present.
Here, this.
Hurry up and sign. Before I could even check the divorce papers that Colin handed me, Beth rushed me. It's too late for apologies now. You should be thankful that Colin and Beth aren't suing you. Annie commented obnoxiously, not wanting to appear hesitant. I checked that Colin had already filled in his part, silently signed, and then looked up. All three of them were wearing a slight smile.
Okay, now show us all the electronic financial statements,
Colin said, so I showed him on the computer I had been using. Beth and Annie peered at the screen from either side as Colin hurriedly attempted to open the electronic financial statements. Their previously smug expressions changed completely. What's this? Annie was the first to speak upon seeing the account balance. Is this correct? Beth shifted her gaze to Colin and murmured. Colin nodded at Beth and then said, Hey, what's the deal? Why does it only say there's $30 left? He questioned me while pointing at the computer. This is all the company's money. Sure, there's some coming in at the end of the month, but as I've explained multiple times, our expenses outweigh our income. We don't have any extra money lying around. I laid it out plainly.
You're kidding me, right? We're printing and delivering stuff every day. How can we be broke?
It's true that we make around $30,000 a month, but printing requires multiple machines, not just the printer. Lease costs for leased machines alone eat up more than $10,000 a month. The electricity bills are nothing like home expenses, and we have delivery trucks and forklifts to pay for. Since Orville passed away, I've been juggling more than $3,000 in monthly loan payments from the bank. That and our income basically cancels out. On top of that, Beth and Colin have been draining us with personal loans, which cost us another $2,000 a month. I've been handling that personally. Life expenses? I've been covering those too. I reiterated these facts and said, if I don't have to pay off Beth and Colin's debts anymore, I'll have over $2,000 free each month. Life would get a lot easier.
Stop lying. We're working hard every day. How can we be broke?
Colin, who refuses to understand, gets emotional and starts yelling. Yelling won't change a thing. That's because yes, we have revenue, but you and Beth have already squandered it with your loans. Once they're paid off, we might save up to $5,000. I won't be dealing with it anymore, but they'll feel the pinch for a while. Let them learn the hard way. When does this all get paid off? Annie poses a practical question. It's annoying, but if I don't answer, we'll go in circles. Bank loans another 3 years, personal loans from Colin and Beth over 5 years. When I respond, clearly annoyed, Annie gasps. Wait, so we're going to be in the red for another 3 years? Annie, who probably had her eyes set on the money, visibly deflates. In the current situation, yes. Finally, the conversation advances as Annie understands. What about hidden bank accounts? Orville must have had some, right, Annie? Beth tries to lift Annie's spirits. It seems Beth encouraged Annie to think about this. Yes, shouldn't there be hidden accounts from Orville? Annie, prodded by Beth, confronts me with wide eyes. She's so blatantly greedy. I've never heard of any hidden accounts during his lifetime, nor have I ever seen any. Maybe you should all go look for it. I have no idea why Annie is insinuating about hidden accounts. She's watched too many movies and shows. Gradually coming to terms with reality, Colin finally spoke up.
Wait. So how have you managed to keep us afloat all this time?
I had been waiting for this question. Well, I explained how I had been making ends meet by leveraging my personal income. I run a blog on social media called Tales of Struggle in a Small Factory and have over 1 million followers. A substantial advertising revenue is directly deposited into my personal bank account every month. I have to file separate taxes for this income. You'll see it in the books later, but the company's expenses are covered by loans from me personally, so the company is obliged to pay me back. Please consult with your accountant and lawyer about this. This was the most important thing I needed to convey today. Apart from the divorce settlement, I would become a creditor moving forward. I have been taking care of the family up till now, but that ends. They owe me, and I intend to collect. Ew, Colin, you're basically poor even as a CEO. Annie, who had quickly grasped the situation, looked at Colin with disdain. Colin, I can't marry you like this. Goodbye! As Annie turned to leave, Colin and Beth tried to hold her back.
Don't worry, we have enough revenue. We can ask the bank for additional financing,
Colin reassured her.
That's right, Annie. Orville's company is credible. There's nothing to worry about, Beth added.
Whether Annie walks away or stays is her call. They were so engrossed in their discussion that I decided it was time for me to leave. Months later, Colin and Beth went to the bank to ask for additional financing, but were declined. Out of options, they had to reschedule their loan payments to be lower, but over a longer term. Whether to call this predictable or just pathetic, I'm not sure. Not long after our talk, Colin and Beth visited my family home.
Avery, I was a fool. The company can't run without you. Please come back.
Colin pleaded with me at the entrance.
I'm really sorry. Avery, I've talked to Colin. Can you please help him?
Beth also apologized profusely next to him. They must have hit a financial wall and swallowed their pride to come here. But it's too late. My parents didn't even let us pass the front door. We talked at the entrance. There's no way I or my parents would forgive this. You have good sales, don't you? Why not consult with Annie instead? I pushed them away coldly and they left, shoulders slumped. Watching their retreating figures as they left felt both ridiculous and exhilarating. Solving the problem isn't just a matter of rescheduling. Most of Colin's clients have ended their contracts and come to me directly. Since I had mass emailed my farewell using my personal email, many opted to come with me, knowing I can correct the data. For Colin, who can't even use a computer, retaining clients is a long shot. I've secured exclusive contracts with a major printing company and have no problems with print arrangements. The rumor mill says that Annie is now cold shouldering Holland. Both Colin and Beth look gaunt like they haven't eaten well. I've heard there are even penalties coming from the dwindling client pool. Though they brought it upon themselves, it's quite a dramatic downfall. After getting used to my new life, I visited Orville's grave. Standing there, I remembered his words to me.
Avery, I'm leaving the printing company to you, but if you can't stand my foolish wife and son, cut ties with them. They're not bad people, just lost in money.
Orville might have sensed that this would happen. I apologized for not being able to save his company and updated him about the recent offer from my lawyer. Orville, the company is on the brink of bankruptcy under Colin. My lawyer approached me about buying it. What should I do? Buying the company would cost tens of thousands, but it's a steal for me now. If used as a subsidiary for the major printing contract, it could be worthwhile. If Colin changes his ways, hiring him as a worker might be worth considering. Would that repay my debt to Orville? But I can imagine Orville in heaven shaking his head and saying,
Avery, you don't have to force yourself.
Hi, I'm Abby and I'm 31. At 25, I started a small app development company. Before that, I worked in the IT sector. That company wasn't big, and it was a time when new companies were popping up everywhere. When my previous company started struggling, I took a leap of faith and quit. I then founded a mobile game development company. My husband Mikey is the same age as me and was a colleague at my former job. Several people quit around the same time as I did, but Mikey chose to stay. He didn't like the idea of me starting a business at all. You see, Mikey's not the adventurous type, nor is he keen on trying new things. He always seeks stability. He doesn't have much ambition at work and isn't interested in promotions. For Mikey, a simple life is enough. He's not into materialistic things, nor does he have any particular hobbies. In contrast, I'm the complete opposite. I strive to achieve in my work and love to face new challenges. Shopping is a treat, and I cherish attending concerts of my favorite artists. At first glance, we might seem incompatible, but that's not the case. We complement each other, filling the gaps the other has. I'd say we're pretty compatible. Our love story began at the workplace, and we tied the knot 2 years ago. 6 months back, we bought our dream single-family home. We didn't want to compromise, so it's a white-themed house that we're very particular about. Since we both love kids, we've set up a kids' room for our future child. Every day, we carefully clean our wooden-scented space, cherishing each moment. Lately, since moving to our new home, Mikey's been saying, I really want kids soon. If you keep working non-stop, Abby, you'll be left behind. Everyone on social media has kids, don't they? You see that, right? Our parents are also pressuring us. Maybe it's time you take a step back from work.
This was my biggest fear. Mikey's income has significantly decreased. The company he works for is underperforming, with many employees quitting. Now, including Mikey, only 3 remain. And they're often working remotely, which means hardly working. This month, he's hardly been to work. Before I realized it, his pay resembled that of a part-time job. We have a mortgage to pay, and we can't live on Mikey's income alone. Discussing our financial situation directly is a delicate matter, so I've been avoiding it. Mikey realizes his income has dropped, but he shies away from the idea of finding a new job. I carefully chose my words as I responded. Well, kids, I'm not getting any younger, but right now I really want to focus on my work and save some more money. When I do have a child, I want to prioritize them, I just haven't found someone I can trust fully when I'm away. So please bear with me a little longer. I promise I'm thinking about it. As I said this, Mikey looked displeased.
You know my mom keeps going on about wanting a grandkid, right? You have to think about my pride too. She's been so pushy that I even told her that you have a medical condition that makes it hard to conceive, just to make her understand.
I was aware of that. Every time my mother-in-law saw me, she'd say, Abby, work is good and all, but a woman's role is also to have children. No matter how successful you are, if you don't have a child, you're incomplete. You should embrace your femininity soon. I couldn't possibly agree with such a sentiment, but my mother-in-law is stubborn and traditional. There was no way Mikey, a mama's boy, would ever stand up to her on my behalf. Being tired from work, I tried to avoid her as much as possible. Every encounter would inevitably lead to the topic of kids. She probably doesn't know about our financial situation. Considering the current economy, it's hard to even think about having a child. Then one Sunday, as we were enjoying our day off, the video doorbell rang. The monitor displayed my mother-in-law. Though I wanted to pretend we weren't home, our car was in the driveway, so we couldn't. Mikey opened the door and let her in. Without missing a beat, she threw a snide remark at me. You've embarrassed me, Abby. Naturally, I had no clue what she was talking about. I ran into an old friend from my school days. She has 3 grandkids from a son who's a year younger than Mikey. She was showing off. I never imagined I'd face such humiliation at this age. This is what you get for having a clueless daughter-in-law. She directed her anger at me. It's all because you won't give us a child. Don't you feel sorry for Mikey? Time's ticking and you need to plan for the future. You keep talking about work, but aren't games just for nerds? Anyone can do that, can't they? Ignorance is truly terrifying. She had no idea about my efforts and achievements. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Listen, mother-in-law, I think you need to realize how uninformed you sound. I get that you want a grandchild, and I'm genuinely sorry you feel this way. But when you belittle my career, I can't stay quiet. Not everyone can do what I do. Saying things like that about the games we pour our hearts into every day, well, it's hurtful. She smirked at me. Why are you getting so defensive? What's more important to you, games or kids? If you tell me that a nerd's game is more important, I'd understand. But that would be a ridiculous thing to say, right? As I kept trying to avoid conflict, things seemed to take a turn for the worse. My head started to throb.
Seriously, mother-in-law, you're so clueless. Comparing those things doesn't even make sense. They're completely different. I get your point, but from now on, this is a matter between a husband and wife. We'll come to a conclusion together. I thought my words might be a bit harsh, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. Even in this situation, Mikey stayed quiet and didn't come to my defense. Suddenly, with a flushed face, mother-in-law yelled at me, her breath hot and heavy. You think I'm the bad one, don't you? Mikey's too kind to say anything, but don't you think a wife focusing more on her job than her husband could upset him? I really feel sorry for Mikey. Excuse me? That's right. Maybe I should move in here. You have a nursery even though you're not having children. It's because you're infertile, right? So that room is just going to waste? Before I could react to that shocking statement, Mikey chimed in with a sarcastic grin.
Yeah, we don't plan on having kids. It might be more efficient if Mom lived here. We're both working, so the house is often empty. It would be better for security if someone's always home. I'm all for it.
I was taken aback by his statement. I always knew Mikey was a mama's boy, but I never expected him to go off the rails like this, without even considering my feelings. Annoyed, I retorted sarcastically to Mikey. You're working from home these days, right? I think our security is just fine. If we need security, we'd hire professionals. We don't have any valuables that require high-end security anyway. Whose life are you talking about? Mikey, visibly agitated, shouted back at me.
That's how you always are, Abby. Looking down on everyone. Can't you see that attitude of yours drains my motivation? Your business success was just a fluke, right? If I had started a business at the time, I would have succeeded too. I could have earned more. Don't think you're the only competent one here.
My patience, already thin, snapped. He made it sound as if he was spouting some undeniable truth. However, I never once said I didn't want children. We just can't have them because we can't get by on just Mikey's earnings. I guess it's time for some real talk. I've kept silent to protect Mikey's reputation in front of mother-in-law. Take a look at this. Can you still say our decision not to have kids is due to my arrogance? With that, I pulled out our household budget and our paychecks. Mother-in-law stared at them with a devilish glare. Mikey looked visibly flustered. Being shown this after boasting must be tough. After all, his earnings are almost the same as a college student's part-time job. Affording a mortgage and supporting a family on this? No way. It would be impossible unless we moved abroad. I began to speak. As you can see, our financial situation depends on both of us working. I don't want our child to struggle or live in poverty. Right now, we just can't consider having a child. If we continue being married, it might never happen. Mikey responded anxiously.
I never told you to show Mom our earnings. Do you enjoy making me look bad?
Mother-in-law added, Oh, come on, earnings aren't everything. Mikey's gentle nature would make him a good father. Why don't you become the breadwinner? The absurdity gave me a headache. Sure, having a child would be fulfilling, but did you know there are mothers out there coping with stress by playing mobile games and doing their best? If you're going to throw judgments, so will I. A real man can support his family. Though, doing your best in whatever situation is what truly matters. We just don't see eye to eye. Mikey's anger finally exploded. He began to shout.
Abby, your high and mighty attitude is what's ruining me. It's like having a boss at home. Leave. I don't want to see your face anymore.
Mother-in-law jumped in. Exactly. You think you can say whatever you want? Fine. We don't need a woman like you. I'm going to get divorce papers. Mikey, divorce this insufferable woman. With that, they both headed to the city hall. I'm still puzzled why I should be the one to leave, but I don't want to be with Mikey anymore. I can't stand his face. Those are my feelings. I've reached my breaking point. I finally decided to move out. I quickly packed my belongings. I've never liked having many possessions anyway. I've always been someone who prefers an empty space. People usually call this minimalist. Packing, it was done in no time. Mikey and his mom came home still in a foul mood. Without missing a beat, Mikey started filling out the divorce papers. Then he threw them at me.
I've done my part. If you're going to stop this, now's the time. Once these papers are submitted, there's no turning back. I'm so distressed I'm out of work for a while. But you can just give me the house as compensation. Lucky for you, I'm not a petty guy. You earn well, so it should be no big deal, right? But hey, if you apologize, maybe I'll forgive you.
Clearly, he wanted me to beg him to stay. I've never met such a small-minded man before. He's the worst of them all. Without any hesitation, I filled out the divorce papers as well. I wanted to see for myself when they were submitted, so I took charge of that. The next day, the divorce was finalized. People often say divorce is harder than marriage, but for me, it was surprisingly straightforward and liberating. Thinking about that beloved house now inhabited by my two least favorite people, it seems scarier than a haunted house. I don't want to go near it. My belongings? Just a duffel bag and a huge suitcase for overseas trips. I'd like to pat myself on the back for living so minimally. For the time being, I decided to stay at my company. My colleagues laughingly said, "We always knew something like this would happen to you, boss, ha ha ha." But my real revenge starts now. I'm not so kind to keep paying a mortgage on a house where people I despise live. To begin with, there's no reason to pay Mikey any compensation. That's right, the house is in my name. Mikey's salary wasn't enough to get a mortgage approved, so it ended up being under my name. So technically, I'm the owner. I don't need that house anymore. To avoid any future complications, I contacted a lawyer. Marital assets are split 50-50. Of course, the house will be sold. It's been well maintained and is still considered new. The property was acquired cheaply, so the difference between the mortgage and the selling price was a life lesson I could afford. I was thrilled it sold quickly at the price I wanted. And that naive mother and son duo, they believed they could continue living there. It seems his mom just found out the house was in my name after their divorce. Mikey had lied about his salary, so it's not surprising she thought that. The moment they found out about the house sale, they were horrified. I got a call from mother-in-law. "Is it fun making us suffer? I'll forgive you, so cancel the sale now. Mikey's breakdown and inability to work is on you." Mother-in-law shouted. I replied, "Forgive me? Sorry, but no matter what you offer, I refuse. Have you ever met someone paying a mortgage for a house they don't live in? I haven't met such a foolishly kind person. We're strangers now." She shot back. "I'll storm into your office right now and spread the truth about what a monster you are. Reputation damage is terrifying, you know." "Feel free to do that. I'm quite busy now," I said, hanging up. I immediately reported the threat to my company's legal counsel. The lawyer arrived promptly. However, despite the threats, Mikey never showed up at my workplace, just as I had expected. It seems Mikey inherited his big mouth from his mother. I provided the lawyer with recordings of my conversations during the divorce and the recent call. The lawyer believes it's more than enough evidence to claim damages. Due to my work, I've developed a habit of recording conversations. Now, let's delve into the financial situation of mother-in-law and Mikey. Mother-in-law has never held a job for long, at most 6 months. Her arrogance always gets in the way, so she virtually has no savings. Their current home is a subsidized housing unit. The rent's only $200 a month, reflecting its modest quality. It seems mother-in-law dreamt of leaving that simple life to live in our house. It's always crucial to live within one's means. In the end, mother-in-law's schemes crumbled. To make matters worse, Mikey, now without a home, ended up moving into that subsidized apartment. And karma seemed to catch up with the duo for their wicked ways. To top it all, the company Mikey worked for went bankrupt. Mikey became unemployed. Moreover, the rent for their subsidized housing reportedly goes up with more occupants. In panic, the two apparently complained to the local authorities, but there's no bending rules for individual grievances. Predictably, the duo, filled with pride, faced challenges while job hunting. They sought high-paying jobs, but without experience, it was a stretch. With no savings to start with, Mikey resorted to day labor and part-time work. And with my legal actions, the mother-son duo became utterly demoralized. They borrowed money from relatives and astonishingly managed to pay the damages in a lump sum. Even the lawyer was taken aback by this unexpected turn of events. I couldn't stay at the office forever. Being at the company keeps me constantly in battle mode. I crave a place where I can truly relax. Come to think of it, I haven't felt relaxed at home recently either. I took the plunge and bought an apartment near the office. After my experience with a house, I decided against it. Living alone, I'm looking for a place with top-notch security. Being single and working hard, it's challenging to connect with neighbors. But I found an apartment that fits all my demanding criteria perfectly. You know, I'm the kind of person who always finds a silver lining. Inspired by recent events, I developed a romance simulation game for adults. It became a massive hit, turning into the company's flagship game. I really do love my job. For now, I'm more passionate about work than romance.
I'm the sole heir to Dad's $3 million legacy. You two better pack up and leave.
With the will in hand, my older brother boasted, "Just leave the money and take Grandma with you." Ha 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 ha. Dana, my brother's wife, smirked as she pushed my mom and me. "That will is definitely fishy." I shouted desperately, but my brother mocked me.
You, who treated Dad so poorly, dare to speak? Go away and never come back. Anger and confusion consumed me. My brother, who suddenly claimed everything and labeled us as villains. His wife, Dana, calling my mom Grandma and trying to kick her out. I can't forgive them. I can't see them as family anymore. Yet, despite our resistance, we were thrown out. This can't be. Standing under the cold sky, staring at the slammed door, my mom smirked. "It's okay, just watch, ha ha ha." My name is Lindy. I'm single and work from home as an illustrator. I recently moved back to my parents' house due to certain circumstances. Speaking of which, Lindy, Dad looked a bit better today. Mom, just back from the hospital, spoke as she took off her coat. I hope so. I'll visit him tomorrow. Hopefully, he'll respond. Yes, I feel he's happy when we're there. He knows we're there for him.
Our father, Theodore Harries, suffered a sudden stroke last year, leaving severe after effects. Initially, he could move and speak a bit, but he soon relapsed and became bedridden. No one expected this, especially since he was a hard-working businessman. Mom and I were devastated. But for our loving dad, Mom and I decided to care for him as best we could. We took turns visiting the hospital, doing everything possible for him. Mom worked, so to support her, I moved back home, which was closer to the hospital. Mom and Dad were the ideal couple. She's naturally cheerful, but was deeply saddened when Dad fell ill. Being alone might be tough for her, which is another reason I returned. As we discussed my dad's condition, my phone rang. It was my brother, Tony. Hello?
Hey, are you two out tomorrow for Dad's care?
Suddenly, my brother says something like that. Why ask now? You've been silent all this while.
What's it to you? Anyway, I got what I wanted.
As Tony was about to hang up, Mom snatched the phone. Tony, visit once in a while. Help out.
Why? Dad won't even recognize me.
Hey, that's not the way. Before Mom could retort, he hung up. What was that about? Maybe he's worried about Dad in his own way? I used to think so. Tony was always selfish, taking my things and belittling me. Ever since I was a child, it has been common for people to take things away from me and make derogatory comments. He'd act sweet to Dad for pocket money, but treated our hardworking mom horribly, even calling her grandma. He moved out long ago and never helped with Dad's care. He recently married Dana, whom we never met. Other than occasional calls like today's, we had no contact. After that, the days of caring for Dad with Mom continued. But a few months later, the unexpected happened. We got a frantic call from the hospital, and by the time Mom and I had arrived, Dad had already passed away. He had another stroke, and this time they couldn't save him. Holding on to Mom as she broke down in tears, I cried too. I remember Dad from my childhood, always finding time to play with me despite his busy work schedule, and buying me lots of colored pencils because I loved drawing. He was always upright, sincere, and most importantly, he cherished Mom. They were the perfect couple. Memories of Dad flooded back, and the pain was unbearable. I knew Mom felt it even more, but we couldn't just mourn. Mom and I began preparing for Dad's funeral. Of course, we contacted my older brother, who lived nearby, and waited for him. But he didn't show up for the wake or the funeral. That night after the funeral, when all the guests had left, a drained Mom and I were left alone. Mom, being the chief mourner must have been tough. You did well. Thank you, Lindy. You've been a great help. I can't believe our brother didn't even come to Dad's funeral. I know. I'm at my wit's end with him. Mom looked troubled. On top of grieving for Dad, my brother was causing her more stress. A week later, things took a drastic turn. After the memorial service, my brother and his wife suddenly showed up. He wore a flashy shirt, not looking like he was mourning at all. The woman next to him, probably his wife Dana, wore heavy makeup and a short skirt. Seriously, where were you during the funeral? I confronted him, but he just walked into our house, ignoring me. Mom looked shocked to see him. Tony, why are you here all of a sudden?
I'm here to find Dad's will. It might mention the inheritance.
Hearing my brother's smug words, Mom and I were taken aback. You're talking about inheritance when you didn't even attend the funeral? Dad didn't prepare anything like that. Ignoring my protest, the couple went straight to Dad's study. We watched in disbelief as they rummaged through Dad's desk.
Ha! Found it!
My brother exclaimed. To our shock, there was an envelope labeled Will in Dad's drawer. He opened it and began reading.
It says here, I, Theodore Harries, bequeath my property, $3 million and the house, entirely to my eldest son, Tony.
What? We were shocked not only that Dad had a will, but also by its contents. Reading further, Tony said,
It also says, my wife Whitney and daughter Lindy have neglected me. Therefore, I leave them nothing. Did you guys mistreat Dad? That's low, haha.
Wow, that's the worst. They're such a cruel mother and daughter, ha ha ha. Dana, trying to hold back her laughter. That can't be true. Let me see that. I snatched the will from him, and there it was, in Dad's shaky handwriting, exactly as Tony read it.
See, it's legit. Poor Dad. He must have written this before he became bedridden. If only I had noticed earlier.
Tony feigned sorrow. We've always cared for Dad with all our hearts, Mom whispered. This has to be some mistake. I shouted, but Tony just glared at me.
I'm taking Dad's $3 million inheritance. You two better pack up and leave.
Holding the will, he looked at us triumphantly. Just leave the money and take your old lady with you, ha ha ha. Dana smirked and added her 2 cents. Do you even realize what you're saying?
Shut up. There's nothing here for you two.
My brother spat out his words. I was shaking with anger amidst the confusion. My brother, who suddenly appeared to claim the inheritance and labeled us as cruel, and his wife, who called Mom an old lady and tried to kick her out. I couldn't forgive them. I couldn't see them as family anymore. I tried to resist, but Tony and Dana kept pushing us out. This will is definitely suspicious. I shouted desperately, but Tony mocked me.
You two treated Dad so poorly. Now go and never come back.
We didn't. Helplessly, we were thrown out into the cold. Staring at the closed door, Mom suddenly smirked. It's okay, just watch, ha ha ha. I was too shocked to say anything. After that, Mom and I temporarily moved to my apartment. One day, Mom shared a significant revelation with me. Hearing it, I felt dizzy from the shock. A week later, we visited our family home again.
What do you want? If it's about money, you're not getting a cent.
Tony, now draped in luxury brands, grinned. Such a greedy mother-daughter duo, coming back now. Dana sat there, smiling as if she couldn't help but laugh. Luxury bags are scattered around the room.
Look at this will, haha. You understand Dad's feelings, right? What do you two want now?
Tony flaunted the will again. Seeing it, Mom sighed deeply and said firmly, You two forged it, didn't you? The couple looked momentarily shocked, but then turned furious.
What are you talking about?
You're just blinded by greed, making false accusations. But Mom remained calm. The date on the will is the day Dad was in the ICU.
What?
I chimed in. You wouldn't know since you never cared for him. That date was when Dad had his stroke. We were at the hospital and he couldn't have written anything.
That's impossible.
Why not verify it with the hospital records? Still, Tony, red-faced, argued.
That's it. Dad must have gotten the date wrong. His signature is right there.
I glared at him. You probably sneaked in while we were caring for Dad and planted it. We can easily check for fingerprints. Mom added. Also, I've kept letters from Dad. The handwriting on the will might look similar, but it's not the same. A handwriting expert would easily spot the difference. Tony's confidence waned. He probably hadn't thought things through.
Why? How?
He mumbled, panicking. I raised you. I know what you're capable of. Mom said, exasperated. Forging a will is a crime, you know, and you can lose your right to inherit, didn't you know?
Why do you know all this?
Tony looked at Mom in disbelief. Well, I'm a legal assistant. Basically, a pro in inheritance matters. Sure enough, Mom had recently passed the paralegal exam and became a certified paralegal. My brother, who hadn't visited home in over a decade, probably thought she was just a part-time worker. But after we became independent, Mom pursued her long-time dream, studied hard, and achieved her goal. My brother looked at us in shock. I said to him, Did you think you could deceive your naive sister and a part-time working mother? Too bad for you. Suddenly, my brother yelled at his wife.
Hey, you said they wouldn't know about handwriting analysis, that it'd be easy. Now we're busted.
His wife shot back. It's your fault, Tony. You should have checked the date before writing.
We paid so much to get the handwriting to look similar, and now it's all for nothing.
That's not my problem. The two bickered loudly. Mom and I watched, but Mom, reaching her limit, Enough! Both of you be quiet. My brother with pleading eyes.
Mom, please, we're family, right? You wouldn't sue me, would you? And you'd share some of the inheritance, right?
Mom responded firmly. What are you talking about? I'll definitely press charges. It's too malicious.
But...
You might even go to jail. Be prepared. Hearing this, my brother and his wife looked deflated. I speak quietly to these two people. I calmly spoke to them. Brother, Dad left a proper will. It was stored at a law firm. It was dated just before he had a stroke. I continued showing the official will. It says, I leave the house and land to Mom. The $3 million inheritance will be divided according to legal shares. 1/2 to the spouse and the rest equally among the children. Do you understand? The couple looked at us, dumbfounded. I continued. So, out of the $3 million, $1.5 million goes to Mom, and $750,000 each to us. Dad was always fair. My brother's eyes widened in shock. Mom then said sternly, But Tony, you forged the will and are now disqualified from inheriting. We won't forgive you. You could have had $750,000, but your greed cost you everything. Hearing this, his wife gritted her teeth, and my brother hung his head in shame. Mom and I glanced at them, then stood up. This place isn't yours anymore. Pack your things and leave. From today, our family ties are severed. Don't contact us ever again. Mom made them pack and chased them out. They looked lost. 3 months later, Mom did press charges, and the couple was found guilty of forging an official document. They avoided jail time, but lost their jobs when their employers found out. Rumors say they now live in a shabby apartment, always fighting. But for Mom and me, they're no longer our concern. We reclaimed our house and successfully inherited Dad's assets. Mom got 1/2, And since my brother was disqualified, I got the other half. I hesitated, but Mom insisted I accept it. We've regained our peace and still live together in our family home. Seeing Mom work hard as a paralegal, I'm so proud. I want to live a life worthy of my admirable parents. With these thoughts, Mom and I look at Dad's photo today, reminiscing about the past.
So, mother-in-law, have you completed the inheritance paperwork yet? Yeah, have you received the money already? Back when my husband was well, Julian and his family hardly ever visited, but now here they are. They deliberately brought our grandson, Elliot, to my house and started asking about my late husband's inheritance. Without even attempting to hide their greedy intentions, they suggested the inheritance should be used for our grandson. For most grandparents, grandchildren are inherently adorable. However, Elliot, who was brought over just so Julian could squeeze money out of me, seemed like a stranger. Now, the process is complicated and it's not done yet. I quickly tell a lie. Ashley smirks. Would you like some help with that? Julian raised his voice, clearly irritated by my attitude. Meanwhile, Elliot, who hadn't even greeted me, was running around the living room and rummaging through the fridge for snacks and juice. For a grandchild, his behavior was far from adorable. And his parents, who were only here to talk about money, did nothing to discipline him. I was stunned by their audacity. To make matters worse, the next day Ashley's parents showed up, preaching to me about what a family should be like. Despite being practically strangers to me, they had no issue voicing their self-serving opinions, possibly blinded by the $3 million inheritance. I had reached my breaking point. Just then, a loud crash echoed from behind me. Taking that as my cue, I decided it was time to teach them a lesson. I am Kristen, 66 years old this year. I was a simple housewife with 2 children, but my late husband was a businessman who had amassed considerable wealth. After his funeral, the subject of inheritance caused friction between me and my children. They say money changes people, but I never thought my own son would be among them. I never expected this to escalate into such a chaotic situation, involving even non-family members. After the funeral, I called a lawyer and discussed the inheritance with my children. In the end, almost all of my husband's estate would be transferred to me, thanks to a will he'd prepared that was intended to compensate me for my struggles. I'd spent 6 years catering to my husband, who was averse to living in a facility. He had a variety of interests: smoking, drinking, betting on horse races, which made caregiving anything but easy. At that time, our children had already moved out. I had done my best not to burden them. So, I felt grateful for the portion my husband had left for me in his will, recognizing my efforts. The inheritance amounted to around $3 million. My daughter Sasha was supportive from the get-go. She was convinced that I should inherit everything, especially considering the separate sums my husband had prepared for the children. The problem was Julian, my son. Frowning, Julian started to speak his mind freely. Sasha is single, and I have a family. It's unfair we get the same amount. Well, your wife isn't entitled to any of it, so it's only fair. Even so, $3 million for Mom, that's way too much. What about your children? Julian was intent on portraying me as a greedy to increase his own share. Despite the will being kept safely with a lawyer, he claimed that I fabricated it. He argued that it was unfair not to divide the inheritance equally among his sister and himself. Finally, Julian threatened to sue me, drawing sharp criticism from the attending lawyer. If they were so adamant about their entitlement, they should have at least shown their faces more often. Sasha used to visit now and then, but Julian never made an effort. He always cited work or parenting as reasons for not visiting us. I sighed, thinking about Julian, who had shown no help with caregiving, but was now so concerned about the money. "Don't worry about Julian, Mom," Sasha reassured me. But is Julian really that strapped for cash? I wondered. Who knows? They often go on family trips. Maybe they just want more spending money, Sasha speculated. Her words gave me an uneasy feeling. That gut feeling proved accurate. I was about to get entangled in yet another fruitless quarrel with Julian and his family. A while after discussing the inheritance and consulting with the lawyer, the paperwork for receiving the inheritance was finally complete. That's when Julian and his wife, Ashley, showed up at our home. Though I had an uneasy feeling, I let them in. After brief pleasantries, they quickly got to the topic of the inheritance. "Did you already finish all the inheritance paperwork, mother-in-law?" "Yeah, is the money transferred?" "No, the process is a bit complicated, so it's not done yet." "If you need help, we can assist. Managing $3 million must be a headache, right?" "I'm good, thanks. So, what brings you here today?" "Come on, don't be so cold. We even brought your grandson to see you." Along with them was Elliot, my grandson, whom I hadn't seen since he was in elementary school, and even before my husband passed away. I had only babysat Elliot a few times when he was a baby. I hadn't even been invited to his birthday parties or any other celebrations lately. The most I had done was send gifts and monetary gifts through Julian. To a regular grandparent, a grandchild might be unconditionally adorable. But to me, Elliot felt like a stranger, just another kid Julian and his spouse brought along to squeeze money out of me. "Isn't it great to see your grandson after such a long time?" "Well, I suppose. Kids will start costing more money as they grow, you know." "That's true. You two better start working hard." "What's that supposed to mean? Don't you want to do something nice for your adorable grandson?" Meanwhile, Elliot, the subject of all this fuss, didn't even greet me. He was busy running around the living room and even went as far as open the fridge to dig out snacks and juice. Neither Ashley nor Julian reprimanded Elliot. They simply emphasized how energetic and cute their son was. "What's so cute about this disrespectful kid?" "Elliot, don't you think you're a bit too wild? Teaching manners and common sense is a parent's job." "Oh, our parenting approach doesn't include scolding, so it's fine." I had no idea what she meant by fine, but it seemed Elliot wasn't getting the hint that he was being admonished. Ashley followed Elliot around as he freely explored the house, so I felt compelled to step in. "Would you listen?" I began, but Elliot cut me off with a, "You're annoying!" He laughed dismissively and even slapped my leg. Watching all this and seeing my son and daughter-in-law only pestering for money without disciplining their out-of-line son, I had reached my limit. "Enough is enough! Julian, you've already had the inheritance talk with the attorney." "Yeah, but taking $3 million is way over the top, Mom. Didn't think you'd be so greedy." "The greedy one is you. I don't have money to give to people who'd never done anything for me." What followed was a heated argument over who was the real money grabber. Frustrated but resolute, I kicked Julian and his family out of my house. Had they been more cordial with my husband and me over the years, I might have considered leaving them an inheritance or education funds. But watching Julian and his crew trying to force their selfish agenda, I felt nothing but anger and disbelief. Despite our heated exchange and my asking them to leave, Julian and his family returned the next day with Ashley's parents in tow. Even after asking them their purpose through the intercom, all they did was demand entry into the house. Figuring it would be a nuisance to the neighbors, I reluctantly let them in. Once inside, Ashley's parents began lecturing me. Look, we're both families with adorable grandchild. We need to help each other out. That's right, you've just lost your husband, you must be feeling vulnerable. So this is family, is it? This is helping each other? I felt like the two of them went on and on, lecturing me. Julian and Ashley just nodded in agreement, not uttering a word. As usual, their adorable son, Elliot, was running around the living room, full of energy. I told him to stop running. "Shut up!" Elliot shouted, as per usual. And for that, rather than being concerned about the child's behavior, I ended up getting blamed by all four of them. Normal families would want to help their sons and grandchildren in any way they can, especially for when the day comes that we need their help. I plan to prepare things for myself so that I'm not a burden on my children. That's a lonely way to think, and that's why you don't get to see your grandson. Aren't you ashamed to only think about yourself? That's right, our daughter gave birth to that child. Your husband was Elliot's grandfather. He would have wanted to help financially. They talked a lot about family ties, but in the end, it all came back to money. Were these two also swayed by Julian and Ashley? Were they here just to get their hands on some inheritance? I had had enough. They assumed Julian would be their future caregiver because he's their daughter's husband. They talked nonsense about what a family should be, even though they're practically strangers. Clash! Suddenly, a loud noise came from behind, making everyone turn around. There on the floor were shattered pieces of a vase that used to sit on a shelf, and Elia's surprised face. He probably knocked it over while running around. Seeing the vase my late husband loved, now in pieces, I felt a surge of anger inside me. Wow, that's a spectacle. Hey, Elliot, are you okay? You didn't get hurt, did you? Why would you put something dangerous within a child's reach? If our precious grandson gets hurt, you know you'll have to pay for it, right? Julian, who just smirked, Ashley and her parents making a fuss about potential injuries. I listened to them in silence, already fuming, and let out a heavy sigh. So, where is the inheritance? You've probably settled all the formalities by now, right? About that, huh? That vase Elliot just shattered was part of my husband's legacy. For a moment, Julian and the others exchanged glances and fell silent. They glanced briefly at the shards, then looked at my angry face and paled. Mother-in-law, you're joking, right? No joke. As you all mentioned, the formalities are already completed, but keeping that much money in cash is a risk nowadays. Who knows who might target it? So I converted it into something valuable. Kristen replied, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. The confusion on their faces was evident. I had to hold back a chuckle. Pretending to be distraught, I looked down and covered my mouth. Come on, there's no way that ugly vase is worth $3 million, right? Right, Mom? Would you like me to show you the certificate for the vase? Oh, and I suppose I'll need to file a police report. What? You're kidding, right? It was a child's mistake. Well, parents are responsible for their children's actions, right? Can you cover the $3 million? Don't say such things. After all, families should help each other. Yes, exactly. So, you'll help me, right? After all, I'm family too, and you ruined my husband's legacy. The four of them exchanged glances, clearly flustered and at a loss for words. The first to speak was Julian. He said it was Ashley's fault for not disciplining their child properly. Ashley trying to argue back, and Ashley's parents defensively claiming that how their grandchild was raised wasn't their concern. Enough! How can adults who can't even apologize talk about disciplining a child? Not one of them attempted to apologize to me. This only fueled my anger further. I couldn't stand their attitude, acting as it was okay to inconvenience others. Only Elliot quietly apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry." He probably did so reflexively, sensing how angry I was. Despite witnessing all this, the four of them kept their heads down and said nothing. Julian finally mustered the courage to say, "We'll discuss this another day." Then they all hastily left. Elliot, the person at the center of all this, was led away with a clueless expression on his face, which I couldn't help but find amusing. So, that's why I thought I should fill in Sasha first. What is Julian even thinking? People really change when money is involved. After a hearty laugh, I made sure to tell Sasha about what had transpired and to be wary of Julian. Every now and then, they'd call as if they'd forgotten about everything, usually about their son's activities or birthday gifts. Every time they call, I remind them cleaning up those broken pot pieces was heartbreaking. After that, they usually hang up pretty quickly. A few weeks after reaching out to Sasha, I got a call from her. Apparently, just as we suspected, Julian had gone crying to Sasha. "Hey Sasha, can you lend me some of the inheritance you received?" "Are you kidding? You're still asking for that?" "I'm begging you. I've gotten myself into a bit of a jam." Julian had frantically approached Sarah, saying he needed to compensate for a $3 million vase he'd broken. When asked what happened to the inheritance he received, Julian said Ashley and his in-laws were spendthrifts and had already blown through it all. Sasha apparently lectured Julian, saying that he brought this on himself by being greedy when he should have been content with what he had. Julian desperately tried to use his kids as an excuse to wheedle more money, but Sasha patiently explained that even her share wouldn't cover his debts. Dejected, Julian went back home. Hearing all this, I couldn't help but laugh again. It seems Julian and his family are now at odds over who should take responsibility for the debt. Occasionally, they'd call, taking turns asking for leniency, but as soon as I'd suggest we talk through lawyers, they'd go silent. They ended up hanging up on their end. Thanks to that, I'm now enjoying my days without any involvement with them. By the way, the story about my grandson Elliot breaking a $3 million vase as part of the inheritance was, of course, a lie. The actual vase was a cheap one my late husband had picked up from Home Depot because he liked it. It had been a decorative vase since my husband's time, but we only started displaying it after Julian and his family had moved out. There's no way they could have known about it. If they had shown any regret for their actions and a willingness to make amends, I would have happily told them the truth. However, I haven't heard from them since those few phone calls. In fact, it seems they've blocked my number. I can't even get through to them. Naturally, the real inheritance is still sitting safely in the bank. I had been planning to use a little for my retirement and leave the rest for the kids, but after the incident, I've completely changed my mind. Sasha, how about we go on a trip together sometime? Sounds good. Where should we go? How about a hot spring resort? Oh, that sounds lovely. Also, I've been wanting to have a proper conversation with you about my inheritance. After seeing Julian and his family's true colors, I've had a change of heart. I can't entrust my late husband's hard-earned money to people like them. I'm now thinking of not only leaving the inheritance to Sasha, but also exploring better ways to use it as we move forward in life.